everyone. Today, as we continue with our conversation on violence against children in the care settings, on set we have Maggie. Maggie is going to introduce herself and her work and her organization and her work in regarding violence against children. Welcome, Maggie.
Thank you very much. Do I look at you? Yeah. My name's Maggie Crewes, and I work with an organisation called RETRAK, and we work across the region, particularly with children living and working on the streets. But as we have been discussing in this conference over the last couple of days, one of the big push factors to bring children onto the street is actually children who have been subjected to violence in the home, and so that's one of the main push factors. People often look at poverty and say, oh, it's because of poverty that children are on the street, but we know that actually we have evidence from the children who come to us who say, yes, our families are poor, but there's always other things. It's always around family breakdown against violence, and that can be anything from neglect, so their physical needs are not met, through to physical violence, emotional and sometimes sexual violence, which then pushes children to the limit, to the point where they feel that being on the street is actually a better alternative than continuing to be subjected to violence in the home.
It's a good thing that you've spoken about children, violence against children on the streets. As Mtoto News, you've been doing a series on children with disability on the streets. And for us, we are concerned by the number of children on the street. From your experience in the region, how is the set of children living on the street? Are they increasing, and what are the push factors that is making them go back to the street? And what can governments, communities and families do to make sure that we reduce this number?
Right, well, I think there's lots of reasons why children come to the street, and usually it's not just one thing. It's usually a multiplicity of factors. We actually do a survey with all the children who come to us about why they have come, and they usually give 3, 4, 5 reasons. There's often some kind of family breakdown or separation or death of a parent, combined with a poor family, combined with not able to go to school, and often with some level of violence, either physical, emotional or sexual. So there's usually a scenario of factors, and then something just breaks the camel's back to push that child and be the last straw for them, where they're pushed. Sadly, sometimes families themselves even encourage their children to move to the street and say, oh, you're big enough now to find some work, look after yourself, we can't afford to look after you at home, you go and find your own way in the world. This can be to a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 14-year-old, so it really is completely unacceptable that children so young are being forced out of their home, which you assume will be the safe place where they should be cared for, and yet becomes the very place that they're running away from because they're not wanted or they're being neglected. So we see a whole range of different push factors. Each child is unique. You have to look at their own set of circumstances. In regard to the growing numbers of children, we actually are currently undertaking a range of headcount or enumeration exercises in the region. We've just finished doing a headcount in Kampala and 3 other big regional towns in Uganda to actually pin down how many children we're talking about. We've also done that in Malawi. So we're you can't tackle a problem if you don't know how big it is. So we're keen to look at the size of these issues and find out what services are needed and how can we address the children and their family issues. We do a lot of family reunification and reintegration work. So our staff go out and visit the children. They do a family assessment and hear also from the families their side of the story and what the needs are in the family home. What do they feel has pushed that child to leave, and kind of try and match that up with the child's story and work together with the child and the family. Okay, what needs to change? Is it some kind of reconciliation or work on a relational level? Is it that the family is very poor and can't afford the uniform, the books, the schooling? What can we do to economically empower that family and give them the parenting skills and the care that they need? We have a lot of children come to us in our projects right across the region, and our kids tell us very bluntly, we've got two problems. our families are poor and they don't know how to look after us. They only know beating. And we have children telling us this over and over again. We are very keen that parents across this continent learn non-violent ways of disciplining their children so that children can be disciplined. Yes, that's important, but in a non-violent way so they can learn right from wrong and can make positive, healthy choices on good behaviour rather than just being beaten and at the end not even know what they did wrong or why they're getting beaten. Children have to learn. They learn because people have modelled good, positive behaviour to them. And I think one of the sad things that we have discussed in this conference again is the cycle of violence. You have a child who is beaten today, tomorrow they become a parent and they repeat that cycle because it's the only thing they know. We need to be able to break that cycle of violence so that our families are safe and nurturing places for our children.
I know we've been advocating for deinstitutionalization, but in our work as Mtoto News, especially when we have bi-monthly social media engagements, we call them Mtoto Talk, and we always get these people telling us, you're talking about the institutionalization, and yet there are thousands and thousands of street children. Where do you want us to take them? So most of them, they tell us, we rehabilitate street children and they have to stay in a home. As an expert in street families and street connected children, what is your take on that?
Well, interestingly, we've worked with street children and their families for the last 20 plus years in this whole region, and it is very rare for us. In fact, I think I can count in 20 years maybe 2 children that we have had to place in an institution. We do everything we can to find either biological family, extended family and kinship care, foster care of children into a non-biological family, so there's not a biological blood connection, but there's a loving family who can care for that child. Children need families. You know, children were created in a family environment. They need to stay and be nurtured in a family environment. We have found that by working very hard with the child and preparing them well, and working with the family and sorting out what are the problems at home and what can we do to make that family home a receptive place. You know, we're not saying every child has to go home to a palace in luxury, but we are saying basic needs need to be met. The child needs to be able to get to school and it needs to be safe. So we will work hard together with the family to say, right, how can we tackle those issues so that there's a safe place for your child to come home to. Some families sadly resist that and have made a decision, no, I don't want my child back. But we find that over time we can work with those families. This is not a quick fix. You know, it's not a band-aid treatment that can quickly find a solution. But if you're persistent and you work with the families and the children, we find that in most places we can get a child home to their family or to a family member.
For the last few years, we found there's been less focus on street families and street children. People are moving into other areas of programming, and like you can count the number of organizations right now working on street children. What has made RETRAK to continue working with street families and street connected children, even after other people have moved, other organizations have moved away from the working street?
Our organisation has a vision that no child should be forced to live on the street. We've still got work to do. That's why we keep on.
So, and then the other thing that for me it's a concern. What steps can, like for example, governments take to ensure that no child stays in the street?
Well, I think there's a lot of work these days around family strengthening, about ensuring that families are able to stay together and create that environment where children are not forced out of the home. So the economic measures to make that family stable on an economic level, job creation and income generation, cash transfers, there's a whole range of things that at government level can be done. There's issues around parenting and how to encourage good parenting. There's the whole area of corporal punishment, and what does that mean in the various countries, where in some places there are laws in place to say no, it's not acceptable. In other countries those laws are not yet in, or if the laws are in, they're not yet implemented properly. So there's a whole range of things that can happen at government level as well, and also freeing up budget to look after children. Sadly, I think there are some governments who think that by rounding up 500 children and putting them in an institution, you have solved the problem. But we know, working with children, that if you do anything against their will, they'll run away again. They have a right to be respected and to be looked after and cared for, the same as any child, and we have to work individually with the children. Budgets need to be available, spaces need to be available, safe spaces where children can come and recover from their abuse and trauma of the street before they're ready to go home. So there's many areas where government can be involved, and NGOs need to be working hand in hand with government to strengthen what they're doing.
So we are going to election in Kenya in the next 46 days, and street children are always the victims. In case something happens, just look on the camera and tell us an organization that works with children, some of the steps that they can make to protect children on the street during the elections.
Right, well, I guess we've worked with children in those situations in other countries where we work as well, and we usually advise the children to lay low, because this is often the time when governments sadly want to round up children and kind of clear them away off of the streets. But we would say, for the kids, lay low. For interested people and for NGOs working with children, now is a really important time to step up and offer places and offer help to these kids so that they don't get caught up. It's a time for organisations to advise children. If you're living on the street, don't be hanging around